Hello and welcome back to Mr. Excalibur. My name is Arthur and today we are looking at Cold Steel's Dragonfly Katana. Now, I will admit that not Dragonfly, but Cold Steel has a bit of a mixed history amongst people. But I wanted to take a look at some of their other higher end katanas, and lo and behold, I found one that I didn't really know what I was getting until I really started looking into it. And this is what we got. Now, here's one thing that is very interesting about this sword, about Cold Steel's Dragonfly Katana, that you don't see advertised anywhere. And this is what's really odd, and what I honestly don't understand. Nowhere do they mention that the Dragonfly Katana has an UNOKUBI KUKURI blade geometry. They mention the other swords having a shinogi tsukuri and some of the other regular blade shapes, but this one they don't mention that. This one most definitely is a UNOKUBI KUKURI blade. And what's really cool about this is, so you've got the bohi here, you've got the narrowed back part of the spine of the sword here. So basically that means that the sword is, you've shaved off some steel here, although this is not at all a false edge, it's just they've narrowed it some so they remove the steel. And Cold Steel actually has gone even a little further. And that is, and I wish I remembered the name of this. I should have looked it up before I did this video. So if you know what I'm talking about, and when you guys see this video, you guys can put it in the commentary. There actually is a name for this, and that is this feature right here. Zip. That is a secondary bohi. It's a very narrow fuller that they've got as a design feature, both on both sides, that goes along the center of the sword, right along the ridge line of the sword, right along the back of the grind of the blade. And there actually is a name for that. It actually is a design feature in katanas that does have a name, and it's like sohi or tohi or dohi or something. I can't remember what it is. I honestly am not being disrespectful, I just can't remember the name of it. But there actually is another name for it. You have the bohi here, but then something else is the name for this secondary bohi that goes along. And then I have to admit that the casting quality that Cold Steel did for the Fushi Kashira and Suba is pretty nice. The thing that is frustrating, I will admit, about this sword is, quite honestly, how this was put together. I found the Ito wrap to be comfy. I mean, it's nice in my hand. The knots are very tight, but you can move them around a little bit. You've got a little loose. And then you've got this little thing here. This thing has a little bit of jiggle to it. The Shidodomi pieces in the Kurgata right here they're loose. So I mean, it's kind of like they had these superior features that they wanted to show off in this model, but the execution is just a little bit slipshod, and that seems to be typical of Cold Steel. They have the best intentions. They've got some good designers, but when it comes to quality control and putting things together, it's just a little bit off. And I will say that for how much this was, this one goes for about between $400 and $500. And I say that because there's a pretty wide price range difference. If you look at how much Cold Steel is offering it for, that's really expensive. But you look at most of the distributors, and it's somewhere in that range. But that's another thing, and that is, it's kind of hard to dispute that considering the availability of these swords. This model is around 12 years old, and yet still you can go on to just about every single distributor, including Amazon. I got this one off eBay, and it was brand new. This thing was brand spanking new. And there's just, I don't know, maybe this was a factory second, and thus maybe some of the little quality control issues that may explain it. I got it actually for a pretty competitive price off of eBay. I've seen some distributors that were selling it less, and I've seen some that were selling it more. But by and large, one of the things that I did notice was this transition here. It is very sharp off the line from the Tsuka, and as a result, the Fushi here has a bit of an edge. I mean, if you're holding it this way, you can really feel it bite into your hand a little bit. Here, not so much, and plus I use gloves, so I probably don't feel it at all. The edge came very sharp, although I've seen sharper. Okay, if you guys have seen the Huawei UNOKUBI KUKURI, which is startlingly similar to this, that one cut a lot better, and yet that one was a lot lighter blade. This cut well. I enjoyed how it cut. I've seen swords that are less that cut a little bit better. The one thing that I really like, and this is actually something that a lot of people don't like about cold steel's katanas, is how weighty they are. I actually handed this to my wife, and she had this as well as a few other models, and she said, yep, the weight right up here. It's clear out here. She could identify that. And so, it was something to really hear that from somebody who really hasn't handled many of these things and be able to just, pinpoint that right away. So, I mean, it's not without its issues. The question at this point, considering how well it cut, its balance, it does fit very nicely into its saya. It's got a nice fit to it. I gotta admit, there's not a lot of shake here. There's a little bit, I mean, just a little bit, but I mean, nothing compared to things like from Hanwei that have that typical rattle at the end here. So, I mean, is it worth its money? Yes, I'm going to say yes. I enjoy it. I like it. I did enjoy cutting with it. I like the heavy hand, the weighted blade. But take a look at some of the footage that I found here. There wasn't a lot of footage outside of Cold Steel's own promotional footage of people actually cutting with the sword. There's lots of footage, people going, ooh, ah, oh, look at it. Isn't it cool looking? But not a great deal of footage of people actually cutting with it. So I don't know what you can really derive from that. But take a look at some of the unboxing footage, some of the footage that we've gotten from other people who have done reviews of it over the past. Like I said, the sword's been around for 12 years. So there's obviously quite a bit of history on it. Most of the stuff that has been posted in message boards has been awfully positive. So take that for what it's worth. And then, of course, watch my own cutting footage with it. I hope this has been informative for you. I hope it will be informative for you even more as you look throughout the video. The video will be timestamped, so there's certain parts that you can jump through if you want. And then, of course, enjoy the music in the background too. So we'll see you all next time. Bye for now. Alrighty, so here we're unboxing the Cold Steel Dragonfly Katana. Now, one very interesting thing about this sword, or at least how I got it, was, first of all, it was available, as I mentioned in the kind of the intro and kind of summation of my experience with the sword, it's available all over the place. You could get it in Amazon. It was available at just about every single distributor I could find. I mean, some of them have sold out, but so many distributors online had them available, they were just all over the place. I got mine on eBay. And as you can see here, it comes in the typical cold steel black box for their swords, which is typical, as I've seen in a number of other cold steel products. Here's how it was packed. Typical packing, that the sword was actually packed outside of the saya, which is typical. This will be my third cold steel katana that I've taken a look at. This one actually came with 2 sword bags, which was kind of nice. One, that plain blue one, and then another one which was very much kind of, I guess you could say, this was, merch, and it had this very nice embroidered cold steel bag, which was kind of nice, kind of nice presentation thing. So again, here's the typical thing where with the side kind of wrapped in bubble wrap, and this is again very typical of cold steel's packing of their swords. Typically the scabbards come separately, not in a separate box, but they come separately inside their packing. Now, there's been a lot of buzz about whether or not to buy these swords, or for that matter, any brand, off of eBay. This will actually now make the third cold steel product that I've bought, cold steel sword that I've bought over eBay that came to me brand new. Here you see the blade covered in cardboard. It then underneath had a thin plastic covering holding in some thin oil over the sword. So, I mean, cold steel does do things their own way. And as soon as I got it out of all the packing, it had that very familiar, very weighty feel to it, as I've seen in the cold steel warrior katana. Not overly so, but it was weighty. All the parts came pretty much tight, with the exception, as I showed you in the intro, with the exception of the Kushira. And I know I'm getting that wrong. Fushi Kushira, it's the end cap. I can never get those quite straight. The end cap did come a little loose. The interesting thing is that it didn't seem to really be holding on anything. Now here's the paper test. Always kind of an interesting thing to see how these things will do. And basically, I wasn't even sawing through it. I was just kind of pushing the sword through the paper, and it was doing a pretty decent job of cutting. The edge came very, I guess you could say, a very rough edge. It was still a single bevel, but the way they had put the edge on the cutting edge really made it actually quite a rough cut, but still very sharp. These are some kind of nice highlights, I thought. I thought the casting quality, again, as I mentioned in the intro, was actually pretty nice. The knots were tight, but it seemed like I could still move them, which was a little odd. Here you're getting a nice close-up of the casting on the Tsuba. Also, again, very nice, very unique that Cold Steel has on these swords. And that's always kind of a nice thing when you've got unique castings. So many of these Chinese-made, Japanese-style katanas, they just kind of, mix and match the same kind of fittings for the Fushi Kushira and Tsubas, and they start to all kind of look the same. Cold Steel, on the other hand, they do have some unique castings, which is kind of nice. So some nice impressions from right out of the box. So a big disclaimer here. I did decide to include Cold Steel's, or at least a part of it, Cold Steel's promotional footage showing them, using the sword. Now, all of this has to come with a very, very large caveat. Number one, you see these guys with these huge wind-ups, and they've got these, you know, oversized, bodyguards, look like, paramilitary guys doing this huge wind-up in order to cut through whatever it is they're cutting through. That, quite honestly, any sword that is decently sharpened probably will do this if you put enough muscle behind it. It will cut. Now, some of the skills here that they kind of demonstrate, this kind of nice double cut on a tatami mat, not bad. I mean, it doesn't, it doesn't suck. So, I mean, you take it for what it is. Cold Steel has always been kind of a standout company in their kind of over-the-top promotional footage, and this footage that they put with the Dragonfly series is no exception. The Dragonfly Katana is actually one of a complete daisho, which is the combination of the katana, the short sword or wakizashi, and essentially what is a knife or a dagger called a tanto. They all are similarly themed with the same kind of fittings, the same color, Ito wrap, all that stuff. So, I mean, you're looking at them just blast through this stuff, and, it does kind of, it is impressive, I'll give it that. So, more than that, I'm not really sure what I can say. Now, this next couple footage, I haven't put the web pages in because this footage, or these next couple clips here, are what I often refer to as UAO clips. And when I looked up the Dragonfly Katana on YouTube, this is actually the majority of what I got. Now, I'm not really sure what that says about the sword, other than the fact that people really liked how it looked, so they took a bunch of footage of it to show it off. So I decided to include some of people's footage here. I've been accused of stealing footage from other people. Here's the thing, guys. I looked at some of the dates of some of this footage. Some of the footage is like 10 years old, and it's from people who had maybe one or two videos on YouTube. I don't think I'm really ripping anybody off, but more along the lines of trying to give you a consensus of what exactly is out there on the sword. Here's another someone's UAO footage where they basically just kind of, run the camera up and down. Now, here's the thing. I don't want to disrespect those people because, quite honestly, anybody who takes the time to take their camera and run it up and down, whatever they want to show off on YouTube, I respect, because they're doing the work, they're showing it, and they're putting it out there for public consumption. I do happen to like some of the better photographic evidence here, showing especially the castings and the blade. Aesthetically, it's a very nice looking sword. That Unokubi Kukuri blade geometry on that, almost overly wide cold steel blade actually looks very nice. So, I mean, aesthetically, for a sword that's mono-tempered, that doesn't have a hamon line, it's not a bad offering. It's actually a very nice looking sword. Now, this guy is the one person who actually did a little bit more footage on it. He did one UAO little bit here where he basically was just kind of showing what it came with, some nice overhead footage. This footage is actually really nice because you can see just how acute the sori is on the blade. It's actually pretty dramatic. So again, that's a stylistic choice they made with this particular model. If that's not something you really like, then, well, that's something that probably is going to disqualify this from something you're interested in. Otherwise, it's it gives it a very distinctive look, which is kind of nice. And again, this overhead footage really kind of shows off that attribute. Now, later on, what this guy did was he did take it into his backyard or somewhere out in a pasture or forested area, and he's doing a little bit of showing off here. That's the kind of the nicer bag that it comes with. It's the same as mine. What's really interesting about the sword is that people continue to make reviews about it, and it's 12 years later. And I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but at the time that I was making this video, which is late April of 2021, I've just found this out myself. In January of this year, it was made official that Cold Steel has been sold. The infamous owner or famous owner, whichever one you prefer, has actually sold off Cold Steel, the brand name, to another sportsman conglomeration group. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with some of these sword models that have been around for a long time, whether or not they're going to continue. Are they going to remain in production? Like I said, the Dragonfly Katana that I bought, and this was through eBay, this thing was brand new. This guy's showing how it cuts through some young bamboo. Not bad. Now, he's not doing really any kind of practice cutting with it. He is literally just hacking away at it, just showing what it does. And then some up close footage of, you know, what the damage on the blade is, if there is any. He really isn't able to show that it took any damage from cutting this bamboo. But anyway, back to the whole thing with Cold Steel. According to the executives of the company that have acquired the Cold Steel name, they intend on keeping most of the products, but some will go and some will stay. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see if perhaps some of these swords that have, you know, lasted quite a bit, like the European models, like their Japanese katanas, are they going to keep them? Are they going to upgrade them? Apparently, towards the end, Cold Steel started experimenting with some other steels in their knives. There's been questions about whether or not they're going to maintain using the same materials on some of these models. So there's a lot of questions as far as the future of Cold Steel at this point. So who knows? You know, I may have gotten the last Dragonfly Katana made by Cold Steel in its current form, so we don't know. But just finishing up, this is really the only footage I was able to find out there of someone actually using this and cutting with it. So, well, there it is. So here is my turn at handling Cold Steel's Dragonfly Katana. Now, as I mentioned in the earlier parts, the sword, it does have some weight to it, and that's just how Cold Steel makes their katanas. They make them very wide and very weighty, and you kind of have to know that going in if you are ever considering buying any of their models. This one was considerably sharper than the Warrior Katana, which I had bought now, boy, almost a year ago. And I know some people are thinking, boy, that's not saying much. That thing was dull as a butter knife. But this one did come very sharp. I've had sharper, and that was evident when I was cutting through these various water bottles. The milk bottles I knew it was going to cut through. It was just a matter of how precise I could be with it. Some of the other heavier plastic juice bottles, that's when you start to see whether or not the blade really on this thing is worth its salt. So here's our first shot, and splat. It wasn't a very good first shot. Took another shot at it, and this time, yeah, I took it down. It went down. Here was another one. This one's one of probably the big tester that I always use as far as it being very heavy plastic. This one, it cleaved the top right off, which is the thickest part of the plastic. And I put it back on here to see what more I could do, and it couldn't get quite a static cut, not yet, but it did okay. It did all right. So getting a couple cuts out of the milk bottles, not bad. This is just a straight, I don't know what you want to call this, just a push of the sword through the material, and actually got a pretty nice static cut, and sliced off the type, so not bad. These bottles are always tricky because they're not that large, and if you pop off the neck really fast, sometimes you can leave them standing. Most of the time, not so. But it was doing pretty good. I wasn't feeling any kind of dings or anything like that. So now here we go, probably the best cut of the day. This is a heavy orange juice bottle, and bang, cleave the top right off. That was my static cut of the day. So I was pretty happy with that, and it actually went back the other way. I'll admit I kind of cut the cutting footage on this one short. So I'm finishing up here with my usual, these are high carbon steel blades. Make sure you wipe them off, you clean them off with some kind of oil, light or otherwise, so you have them play with another day.